And hello and welcome to another episode of Matt and Nori. This is a bonus summer solstice edition, just just for fun really. And I really wanted to do it because I'd like to dedicate it to anyone who needs some healing right now. We've probably all been going through lots of physical, mental health issues, so just sending out lots of healing vibes out there. This story particularly talks about fairies who may be able to heal you. In particular, I'd like to dedicate it to Bob and to Alan, who's having it particularly hard at the moment. So wish you all the best and sort of speedy recovery. Behind me here, I have some lovely foxgloves, which are on great show at this time of year. They're little bit late at the moment. Another alternative name for a foxglove is the fairy bell. Also in Ireland, they're sometimes known as lusmore. Now in Ireland, in County Leitrim particularly, the advice was if you felt that your child was a changeling, which is a type of very naughty fairy that would kind of come and snatch your child and replace it with them and be quite bad. It was hard to tell the difference between whether it was a changeling or your real child who was really naughty. So what they would say in Ireland was to grab one of these lovely bells. I'm not going to take it off. Squeeze the juice onto the child. Grab the child and swing the child 3 times out of the door on a shovel, shouting, "If you're a fairy, away with you." Now apparently the fairy children would instantly die and fade away, whilst the human ones would become better behaved. Now I don't recommend to do that today if you do have any naughty children, but I guess it's a thought, but there are probably laws against that now. Another thing we can remember for the foxglove is its healing properties as well. And we can extract digitalis, and while today it's synthesized, that's where the original kind of medication for heart medicine was found. There's also just another little thing before I start the story. This, although this story does come from Ireland, it's been told in Scotland and in England. It mentions a thing called Fecha, I think that's how you pronounce it, and that was a name for some of the high kings of Ireland. So Fiecha or Fecha. Forgive my pronunciation, sort of any of my Irish friends out there. This is the legend of Knockgrafton. A poor man once lived in the fertile glen of Aherlow at the foot of the gates of the Galtee Mountains. He had a great hump on his back, and he looked for all the world as if his body had been rolled up and placed on his shoulders. The hump was a great weight on his frame that forced him to look at the ground as he walked. The man's name was Lusmore, after the fairy bell foxglove that he always used to wear in his cap for protection. And protection he needed. For although he was harmless and as inoffensive as any man could be, the country people around him had made up all sorts of stories about him. And they said Lusmore knew a lot about herb lore and charms, and you should be afraid to meet him on a dark night, which was really unfair. But he did have a great skill of straw plaiting and straw weaving, and maybe that's why some people were jealous and started all the stories. Early one summer evening, Lusmore was returning home to Capa, and he couldn't help but walking slowly, and it took him a lot longer than anyone else because of this hump. It was quite dark when he came to the old burial mound of Knockgrafton alongside the road. Lusmore was tired, so he decided that here was a good place anyway to rest for the night. Knockgrafton had a well-known ancient well, where the Fíocha had placed silver cups for anyone wishing to drink, and to offer hospitality to show his rule of law. Sure enough, Lusmore found the well and a silver cup, and he drank his fill of the cool, clear water. And also, he gave his thanks to the ancients and the guardians of this place. He sat with his humped back against the grassy bank and looked mournfully up to the moon. She was full and round, casting her ghostly light across the grass and picking out the bells of the foxgloves that grew around him. After a little while, Lusmore thought that he could hear music. Now this wasn't any kind of normal music that he'd heard before. It was high and rich and full of harmony. Many voices rising on the high night air and blending effortlessly with the lilt of the words. and soon he could hear the words. Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. After 3 rounds there'd be a moment's pause, and then it would start again just the same. Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. Lusmore listened carefully, scarcely daring to breathe in case he missed a note. The singing was coming from the moat. Although it was charming, eventually even the most patient Lusmore began to get tired of it, so just a simple round. It was sung over and over and over again. So he waited for the pause in the singing, and when it arrived, he sang the same tune, but with different words. Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday too. And then he carried on singing the same round as the other voices finished the melody on the pause again with, and Wednesday too. The round was being sung by fairies, and when they heard Lusmore's tuneful timing and timely addition to their song, they were delighted. Lusmore was lifted up and travelling at speed through the burial mound to what lay beneath, the land of the fairies. Lusmore found himself dancing with the little people, twirling around and around and around with a curious lightness to the sweet music that kept time for dancing. He was made welcome with fine food and drink, and he ate to his heart's content, being sure to thank everyone as he went. Presently, one of the fairies called for quiet and said, Lusmore, Lusmore, despair not, nor deplore, for the hump which you bore on your back no more. Look down on the floor and see it, Lusmore. As soon as these words were said, Lusmore felt himself so light and so happy. He thought he could have bounded up at once and jump over the moon. He saw his hump tumbled to the ground off his shoulders. He then tried to lift his head up high, but worried he might hit the ceiling. He dug down again. The great hall of the fairy that caused much hilarity amongst the fairies. For the first time in his life he could stand straight, and he turned round and round again, and everything appeared more beautiful than it had ever done before. Lusmore became so overwhelmed that he passed out. When Lusmore woke, it was broad daylight, with the sun shining brightly and the larks high in the sky. He was sitting with his back against the bank at the edge of Knockgrafton Mound, with foxgloves all around him, and cows grazing peacefully nearby. Lusmore felt between his shoulders blades for the hump, but there was nothing there. His spine was straight and true as he'd always dreamed. But was it real? It was real, and he was wearing a full set of new clothes, which could have only be supposed made by the fairies for him. Thank you, fairies. Thank you a million times, says Lusmore. He plucked up a foxglove stem, covered in purple fairy bells, and slipped it into his new cap. And he skipped towards Kappa, taking each step lightly and happily. When he got back home, he had great difficulty persuading everyone that he was the same man, for at least, as far as outward appearance, he wasn't. He carried on his straw plaiting, and he started dancing as well, and no one with a broader smile than Lusmore. Now, it wasn't long before Lusmore's story was the talk of the countryside for miles around, and it wasn't long after that when Lusmore was visited by an old woman who asked to speak to him urgently. I hear that you had a hump taken off by the fairies. The only son of a friend of mine has got a hump on him that will be his death. Maybe, if he used the same charm as you, he could be cured. Can you tell me more about the charm and how it worked? Lusmore was good-natured and generous, and so he told the old woman how he had added to the tune of the fairies at Knockgrafton, and how his hump had been taken from his shoulders, and now he'd got a suit of new clothes into the bargain. The woman thanked him very much, and then went away to her friend and told her everything. This humpback man, son of her friend, was called Jack Madden. He had always been a bad-tempered and cunning young man who believed more in tricking people by his own wit than by any protection or charms, but after some persuasion, Jack set off for Knockgrafton with his mother and the old woman. He was left alone, sitting expectantly with his back against the bank of the old burial mound just before nightfall. They knew nothing of any wells or silver cups, or giving thanks to the area. But Jack hadn't been sitting long, when he heard the tune going on with the moat. He didn't know, but it was much sweeter than before, for the fairies were singing it the way Lusmore had settled their music for them, and the round repeated without a pause. Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday too. Jack Madden was in a great hurry to be rid of his hump, never thought of waiting for the fairies to pause, or about whether his tune would harmonise with the rest, so at a random point he just suddenly shouted out, "And Thursday too!" No sooner had the words passed his lips than he was taken up and whisked into the burial mound by the fairies, who crowded round him with angry faces, screeching and screaming. "Who spoilt our tune? Who spoilt our tune?" One stepped up to him and said, Jack Madden, your words sound so bad in the tune we feel glad in. This place that you stud in, that your life we may sadden. Here's 2 humps for Jack Madden. And 20 of the strongest fairies brought Lusmore hump and put it on Jack's back, all over his own, where it had become fixed as firmly as if it were nailed on. Out of their land under the hill, and in the morning, when Jack's mother and her friend came to look after him, they found him half dead, lying against the grassy bank with the 2 humps on his back. At home they travelled, horrified through the weight of his other hump and the long journey. Jack Madden sadly died, leaving his heavy curse to anyone who would go to listen to the fairies' tune again and spoil it for them.